YouTube. It is a douchebag in a muscle shirt again, and I'm talking about some history stuff again. And I got the mirror projection on today, so you can read. Like I got my Hammer of Thor shirt on here, and well, the main reason I got the mirror projection on is just I'm gonna show a map with uh, my crappy artistry on it in a little bit here, but this is about kind of Viking age. I think kind of mid Viking age Sweden, and the reason I think this is interesting, the reason I think the map of middle Viking age Sweden is interesting is because Sweden, like by itself, is kind of like, or is kind of still is sort of like a mini like Scandinavia or Nordic world all by itself. Ethnically, well, Sweden's the biggest Scandinavian country, the biggest Nordic country. Incidentally, the difference between Scandinavian and Nordic, all the Scandinavian countries are Nordic. The Scandinavian countries are Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And Iceland is sometimes included. That's a whole nother people argue about it kind of thing. But in addition to Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, the Nordic countries also includes for sure Iceland and Finland. So yeah, Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, sometimes Iceland, Nordic world for sure Iceland, and Finland also a Nordic country. And if you read old books, and people get into like fierce debates about exactly what Scandinavia is, and this, there's also the Scandinavian Peninsula, which is just Norway and Sweden, and maybe part of Finland, arguably, or sometimes Finland. Anyway, people debate this kind of stuff all the time, but the modern definition of Scandinavia is Norway, Sweden, Denmark. And but if you look in old books, sometimes Nordic and Scandinavian were used interchangeably. So sometimes Finland is considered Scandinavia in like older definitions, but the definitions most commonly agreed on today, Scandinavia is Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Anyway, that said, why am I? That said, I was looking at some sort of ethnic maps of Sweden in olden times, and there used to be two groups that, well, three groups kind of that sort of merged together to become the modern Swedish people, and that is the Swedes, the Gates, sometimes called the Gotar or Jotar, and the Goots. However, the Goots may have been kind of the same thing as the Gates, or kind of close cousins. So in a way, it's kind of three groups, but it's sort of two if the Goots are kind of the same thing. Anyway, I'll just go ahead and show you the map. And also, the Swedes weren't always as far north as they are now. Maybe they kind of were. There was probably some sparse, low populated settlements, but it wasn't really their core lands. Anyway, here's the map of like Sweden, like over 1,000. Like I think this is kind of the thing is these lines change depending on the years you're looking at it and everything, but I want to say this is approximately mid, and I made this as a composite from a few different sources, but this is approximately mid Viking age Sweden. Who was there? So I'll show you the map. What do we got here? So, mirror image is a little tricky. So, you can see in the middle here, the Swedes, the Svensk, the classic where the country gets its name, Sweden. And in the south was the Gates. and the Goots, who might have been close cousins of the Gates or kind of the same thing. And in the south, Danes. Danes used to be in Sweden for since forever ago, basically. And then in the west, this border between Norway and Sweden, the mirror image thing throws me off, but the border between Norway and Sweden has shifted over the years, but Norway used to be a little fatter. Sweden used to be a speck less fat. But yeah, Norwegians and Swedes have kind of sometimes fought in wars over territories around here and a little bit down here too, I think. But generally, probably I didn't highlight it, but probably here too to some extent. You know what I'm saying? Along the border with Norway, there's been dispute, and also probably times when it wasn't so much wars, but just cultural, linguistic shiftings, you know. And then, of course, in the far north, we have the Sami, who also are in Finland and Norway, and a little bit of Russia even. And I wrote here, maybe some Finns were around the area of the. I got a phone call. Anyway, I'm going to let that go because I'm making a video here. And there was a group called the Cavents, and if somebody from Sweden listens to this, maybe was there a group called the Cavents in like ancient Sweden, or or did I imagine that? Did I have a fever dream and imagined they were supposedly like a Slavic or possibly Baltic related? Sometimes the line between Slavic and Baltic can be blurred, especially when you're talking about ancient people. Did I imagine that? Because a long time ago, I looked up some stuff, and I thought I discovered this little ethnicity called the Cavents in ancient Sweden. But now when I look it up, I can't find it. But I think that has to do with the way the internet has changed over the course of the last, 5 to 8 years or so. It doesn't seem to give you as good a information, or at least not as broad a information as it used to. I cannot find the Cavents. Maybe it's because I don't know how to spell it. This is just, the spelling could be completely wrong. My pronunciation's probably wrong too, but there was some little like Slavic type group in like kind of the northeast-ish of ancient Sweden. Was there? Am I imagining that? Did I remember something wrong? Anyway, if a Swede ever sees this video, tell me about it. Anyway, I just think that's interesting because, yeah, Sweden in times past, the Swedes and the Gates were a different people. And according to Beowulf, they might even been enemies and stuff. But it seems that throughout history, they have changed alliances. They've been enemies. They've been friends. There's a Norwegian saga where they were like bragging about how they raided the Gates, and they said the Swedes were pledged to protect them, but they'd rather stay home where it's warm and safe, because, Norwegians kind of do this thing where they accuse Swedes of being wimps and all that. But just an ancient story, and I got a little Swedish ancestry in me too, so I'm not saying Swedes are wimps, but yeah, at some point the Swedes and the Gates integrated, and the Goots, they're like the Gates or whatever. They integrated and became the Swedish people. And the Norwegians eventually got pushed west. And the Danes got pushed out in the late I think it was like the late 1500s or might have been early 1600s. But after the breakup of the Kalmar Union, the Danes got pushed out. But yeah, ancient Sweden had Swedes, Gates, Sami, Danes, Norwegians. Ancient Sweden had it all. Ancient Sweden was like was kind of like the whole Nordic world in one country, or all Scandinavia in one country in a certain sense. So I just think that's kind of neat as a history nerd that Sweden wasn't just Sweden like it is today. I guess even today, southern Sweden is called what is it called? It's called like Gotland, which is in reference to the gates, and then middle Sweden is Svedaland or something like that. Middle Sweden refers to the regular Swedes, and then northern Sweden is called Norrland, I believe it is. But but in terms of like an identity, people, as far as I know, people don't call themselves, "Oh, I'm a Gate." It's not, you're a Swede, because they integrated and intermarried, and the cultures merged, and the Swedes won out in terms of being the name, the purveyor of the name, and everything. So anyway, I talked more than I thought I would on this subject, and yeah, I think I will leave it there then. Just think that's interesting. Sweden, like is is more than just Sweden. Yeah, so maybe nobody else gives a darn, but history nerd, I think that's kind of interesting that how many peoples were in ancient Sweden. All three of the former Vikings, the Norwegians, Swedes, and Danes, were there in ancient Sweden. That's my little ramble today, a little history map. If anybody watches this, thanks. See you later.